G'day everyone, the Duskveil is an awesome two-phase boss in the secret area of Chapter 4, the Purple Cloud Mountain. I'll start by breaking down the boss's abilities so that you can identify and recognize the start of combos and then know how to deal with them. And then I'll show you my kill clip with some general tips and discussion around build. So let's dive in. When the boss draws its left shoulder back like this, it's about to do a single quick thrust that just requires one dodge. This is never comboed with anything else. When the boss lifts its right leg like this, it's about to be a two-part combo. It'll be a stomp with its right leg, followed slowly by a head smash. You need a decent delay before your second roll. You can use Rock Solid effectively against both the first stomp as well as the second headbutt. The headbutt's easy because it's slow and the stomp warns you that it's coming. Sometimes when the boss stomps with his right foot, he'll then leap backwards in a bit of a retreat and then throw some wing spikes at you. This is simple and requires one dodge. When the boss raises its right leg in a bit of a side kick like this, it's about to be a three-part combo. It'll start with the kick and then followed by two side-to-side slashes. These require evenly spaced dodges. It might look like he's doing a double swipe in each direction, but it still only requires one dodge each way. All three of these are also easy targets for Rock Solid. When the boss raises its right hand like this, there's two different combos it could be. The first is the initial slash down, and then if he stays down crouched like this, he's about to do a very delayed second slash backwards. The alternative combo is just a basic double slash, right then left. Either of these are also easy pickings to deflect with Rock Solid. Now occasionally the boss will jump up into the air like this. After this it'll dive down in a single strike, which you need to dodge the moment that you notice it's starting to descend. I found I always needed to dodge this slightly earlier than I thought I did. There's also another jump into the air, but this time he kind of goes upside down a little bit into a bit of a spin. This is a two-part combo. The first one where he comes down into a bit of a spinning swoop, and then he'll hover back up and do a final thrust down. That second one is quite delayed. Finally, for phase 1, when the boss spreads its wings and roars like this, when this happens, the boss is going to charge back and forth across the room through you 4 times. One dodge on each pass is all you need, and this is another one where I often dodged too late. You need to dodge earlier than you think. At the end of the 4th charge, the boss will crash with exhaustion, and you'll have a moment to do a bit of damage. If you're struggling with phase 1 still, that's a good spot for transformations or spirits. Once you're more comfortable with it though, probably save your transformations for phase 2. Once you get to phase 2, the boss retains most of its moveset from phase 1, but some of the combos get a few extra parts and hit a little harder. It also gets 2 or 3 big new abilities. When the boss does this big roar, he's about to send a single flurry of little spikes at you, followed by a continual barrage of spikes. You can probably dodge these or maybe even staff spin them, but honestly, I just ran and that seemed to work, so I didn't try anything else. I don't think you need to overcomplicate it, but go ahead and dodge them or staff spin them if you want some extra focus. Something worth noting is that a heavy attack during this big roar will interrupt the rest of that ability, so watch out for that opportunity. There's 2 new abilities that occur when he pulls the sword out of his mouth like this. The first will be 2 ranged projectiles, followed with him leaping at you and smashing with his sword. All 3 of these are fairly evenly spaced and easy to see coming as well, so not too bad to dodge. The second combo he does after pulling the sword out of his mouth like this is going to be 3 horizontal slashes on the ground, followed by him leaping up into the air and throwing the sword back down into the ground near you, which you also need to dodge. Now he'll then come down and land on top of his sword and prepare to kick the sword into the ground, which will cause a massive, very powerful shockwave. Now at this point you want to be fixated on that left foot of his, and the instant you start to see it move towards the sword, you need to dodge once into him. Now unfortunately, I can't find a significant difference between the start of these combos. Watch them here in slow-mo together. It looks pretty much exactly the same to me. So I think you basically need to dodge into the first one and then take note whether it's a projectile or just the sword, and then adapt for the rest of the combo. So here's some of the combos that have stayed the same. This one here, which is the right hand slash followed by the second slash after the delay. The single left-handed jab hasn't changed at all. And the stomp and then headbutt starts exactly the same, and then sometimes, not always, he'll follow this with 2 swipes into the one where he jumps on top of his sword, which I've already showed you. He does this little sidestep followed by a single slash and a bit of rot breath, but it's pretty easy to react to that one. And he does those same wing spikes from phase 1, but just 2 of them this time. Very easy to dodge. The double swipe that starts with his right wing is now followed after a short delay by 2 quick slashes of the sword, which need back-to-back rolls. The side kick followed by 2 swipes from phase 1 is now followed by a whole bunch more. After the 2 swipes, he'll jump back for a moment and then breathe a bit of rot breath. He'll then throw his sword into the rot breath, which can hit you if you're standing there, and then follow this with 3 ranged projectiles, 2 in quick succession, followed by a delay, and then the third. The aerial attack where he does the little spinning swoop thing is exactly the same as phase 1. The other aerial strike from phase 1 starts exactly the same. It then has a second one of those, and then is followed by 2 slashes with his sword, 1 swoop, and then a final plunge. Now as far as I know, the boss always starts exactly the same. He'll toss these spikes at you, followed by an aerial strike, but he'll crash into the ground and lay there for a moment. You want to make good use of this, so if you're using the non-able spirit, which I do recommend, take note of this combo. You want to do 4 light attacks, followed by non-able, which after 4, will do a quick slam, followed by a jump and slam. Start spamming light attack again, and it'll continue where you left off, being your 5th light attack, so you get the final hit in. As you've seen there, I'm being pretty offensive. After that non-able combo, you want to hit Immobilize, get your 5 light attacks in, and then follow that with a heavy attack, and you're off to a really good damaging start. At this point, you'll actually have to play the fight and dodge mechanics. If you usually rely on your transformations and a pluck of many in particular, which can really do a lot of damage, I really urge you to save those for phase 2. It's a much harder phase, and you want to be able to burn him down as much as possible. So for the remainder of phase 1, you really want to slow it down, watch the boss, watch for his mechanics, and just respond and get damage in when you can. Don't be too greedy, and wait for opportunities like here where he's crashed after those 4 charges. This is a good chance to do another one of those 4 light attack non-able combos. Another thing to think about is conserving as much mana as you reasonably can during this phase 1. As I said, it's much easier, so you want to save as much of your resources for phase 2 as possible. To help with your mana pool, because we are using non-able, which takes about 100 mana off, so I recommend at least the 3 nodes on the left hand side, mostly just for the damage on the top left and mana return on the bottom left. If you have spare spark points, take the stuff on the right as well, but that's less valuable. For Rock Solid, for the same reason, I'm using the whole tree, and just because I particularly like it on this fight, there's a lot of very easy, well-telegraphed abilities that you can deflect with it and get that little damage bonus, as well as a bunch of focus. Now, hopefully you've managed to transition to phase 2 with a decent amount of your Wine Gourd charges, as well as mana. If you are really struggling with this boss, this would be the phase where you want to use your transformations liberally, as well as a Pluck of Many if you are building into that particular spell. If you haven't tried a Pluck of Many spell with its whole skill tree filled out, I'd recommend you do it at least once just to see how potent that one spell can be. Again, when I've got the windows of opportunity, I'm using that forward light attack into non-able into 5th light attack, Immobilize, and then do another 5 light attacks. It's a great combo and it gets out a lot of damage. In addition to the strong active ability and short cooldown, non-able also gives really good offensive stats at the expense of mana if you don't use spells too much. As you can see, fully upgraded, it gives 10 damage, 3% critical strike chance, and 6% crit damage at the expense of 100 mana, which I think is a pretty good trade-off, especially if you're using the mana conservation talents in the Immobilize and Stoneform tree, which I've just showed you. In this fight, I'm using 3 pieces from the Iron Tough armor set, largely just because it's my highest defense armor at the moment, but also the 2 set bonus to Nick of Time, getting more focus, is also quite valuable. The only reason I'm not using the 4 set, which is the headpiece, is because you need the item off this boss to craft it, so I'll make that after this. In its stead, a good alternative is the Golden Mask of Fury, especially when using non-able, because it's such a short cooldown, you can trigger that extra focus pretty often. If you don't have the Iron Tough set because you haven't beaten the Yin Tiger, that's okay. The Gale Guard armor set is a really good, just generic, always useful armor set, as it gives you spell cooldown and more focus just from doing perfect dodges, which you're always doing a few of here and there. Just make sure to go upgrade it so that its defense is actually comparable with the level we're at here. For curios, I'm using the Jade Moon Rabbit and the Gold Sun Pro combination. Together they give 3% damage increase and 3% damage reduction, so a 6% swing, which is not bad. I've also got the Gold Spike Plate, mostly just for the 32 defense that it gives. For the rest of my spark points, I always recommend the entire stamina tree. Dodges and benefits to stamina are just too valuable. In the martial tree, I always take the first 4 on the left there for boosts to your light attack and focus generation. I used to go all the way to the bottom of that left tree just kind of because, but I've recently stopped doing that because I don't think they're actually that valuable. You might very occasionally get some damage reduction from Sturdy, but for hidden strength, when are these bosses ever allowing you to attack so much that you're out of stamina? Not very often, if ever. Now my preference for stance is thrust stance. This is what I use at the moment. Again, I don't take those bottom 2 talents on the thrust stance, I just don't think I get enough value out of them for 4 spark points. Now I'm a bit of a stat monkey, so I always put the rest of my sparks into these passives. I really like stats. But if you use spells more, I definitely recommend putting these leftover points into the Pluck of Many tree. That spell is very strong and can really carry fights. In general, use your highest damage staff. I'm using the Spider Celestial staff, which is my best at the moment, but if you killed Yellow Long, you'll probably have the Golden Long staff, in which case definitely use that. I just happen to miss him, so I'll go back. So that's it. If the guide helped at all, please like and subscribe for more Wukong content. I'll be making guides for most of the hard bosses in this, and make sure to leave a comment if you've noticed anything I haven't. Thanks for listening, everyone. Cheers.